Hi, this is John with Star.make, and today we're going to make a 3D printed audio waveform. Now, these aren't new. They've been around for a while in different ways and shapes and forms. I've seen CNC milled waveforms and laser cut waveforms, and while I haven't really seen many 3D printed waveforms until I started looking for them recently, I know there's a bunch out there. If we go to just doing a search for waveform on Shapeways, you're going to see a bunch of these. You're going to see these waveforms here that have been spun around. You're going to see the outlines of waveforms. Here's one right here, a waveform necklace that is completely filled in. About a week ago on Twitter, I saw someone made a Valentine's Day waveform, and I thought it said "You're the one." It was I just can't seem to find it for some reason, but it was a very nice print, and it was for sale to give to someone for Valentine's Day. Now, of course, Valentine's Day being Sunday, we're gonna have to make something ourselves, but I kind of like it anyway because we can actually take either our own wave file or MP3 file, or we can record our own voice saying "You're the one" or "I love you," or we can just download something silly off the internet like I'm doing today. So the interesting part about this waveform is that's your waveform right there. And let me look into the camera. It's actually going to look this way. And if I show you this, and I bring up the waveform of a very popular soundbite on the computer, you can kind of see it looks very similar. And this waveform is none other than Professor Farnsworth of Futurama.
Good news, everyone!
And as you see on the screen, that's what the actual wave file looks like. That's what the actual audio looks like. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this waveform, we're going to take it into our favorite photo editing program. We're going to clean it up just a little bit, and then we're going to send it to Blender. And Blender is going to allow us to do a displacement map that will take different grayscale values of the file and give us certain heights for that. And then we're going to take it into our favorite slicing program, or any slicing program, and just make something that we can send to the 3D printer. So let's go. Okay, as you see here, this is that good news everybody waveform. And to get this into our photo editing program, I'm going to hit Control Alt Print Screen. And that will take a screenshot of what we see here, and we can put it into Photoshop, or, as I said, your favorite photo editing program. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and crop down everything around this waveform. Come through here, come through here. Now, I did skip a step. If you want to do your own voice or something, you can easily just record using any microphone. You could use your cell phone and send yourself the file, or you can download something off the internet, like what we've done here. So it's pretty easy. I'm not going to discuss that part just because it should be pretty simple. If not, leave a comment down below, and I'm sure I can help you out with that. What we're doing now is we're isolating this waveform using the crop tool in our favorite editing program. And right now, as you see the file, it's really kind of messy. We're not going to be able to really print something that looks like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to select everything and then expand the selection a little bit. And I'll show you what that's going to look like now. If I take our magic wand tool and I click the top here, and I hold the Shift key and click the bottom, I'm going to select everything outside of that waveform. I'm now going to use a command called contract. I'm going to go to Select, Modify, Contract, and I found that about a 5 pixel contract looks good. And if I do it like that, you can see it. Now I do have some islands here and whatnot. But as you see, it evens out these spikes and valleys and everything else. So it looks like we're going to be able to get a pretty decent print from that. What I'm going to do is go over and select my brush tool, and oops, wrong one. So let's do paint this out, and since we're anti-aliased, it's going to be kind of funky. So I'm going to now invert my selection and come back through. Now we could have turned off anti-aliasing, but you know, sometimes it's easier just to go with the flow. And this is our waveform. This looks really good. If you wanted to print this and just take this in the Blender, how we're going to do it without the lines that we're going to make, hopefully you see that there are lines in this print, and that's what the print that I saw last week had. If I find it between now and then, I'll go ahead and post it. But and these lines mean nothing. They are just evenly spaced lines to give the print a little bit of depth and interest. But what we have now is we just have the base. And as I mentioned, when we take this in the Blender, whether you have the lines imported into Photoshop or not, you can still come out with something pretty neat. And now we also saw on Shapeways, we saw something that looked like this, but it was hollow on the inside. Now the way to do that is you go to your Magic Wand tool again, you select the actual waveform, go to select, modify, contract, and then for that I liked, when I was playing around with this earlier, I liked 10. And if you just delete that, now you've got something, you do the exact same thing, you print that, and now you've got your outline. And you'd have to mess around with this to see how thick or thin you like the line. But if you want to make a thicker line, you would just make that contract more. What it does is it pulls your selection from the edge further, and hence creating that thicker line. Since we're not doing that, I'm going to undo that and deselect our marquee tool. Now, since this would be interesting as it's kind of thick for a necklace, I may do a video on just forming and melting PLA. So my thought is maybe if you wanted to do a bracelet or something. This isn't for me. This kind of isn't my style. But if you wanted to make it smaller, I've seen earrings, I've seen necklaces, as we saw on the Shapeways page. But what I also did was I put these little dots here. And in order to do the dots, I'll bring us over to, now this is kind of jumping the gun, but we would do dots here by just using the circular marquee, the elliptical marquee tool, make our circle, color it in black, make our circle, color it in white. By now you should realize that whatever's black is going to have thickness to it in Blender, and whatever is white is not. And the gray is going to be kind of a medium value. Now to get to the gray, here's what we do. You bring your existing waveform, and what I like to do is make the canvas double size in your height, and then I anchor it to the top. If you don't have that anchor to the top ability, when you make your double-sized canvas, just move your waveform up, and then create this line pattern on the bottom. Now, since I'm creating this again from scratch, just because I wish I had made those lines a little bit thicker, these lines are a little bit different, and depending on what the spacing of these lines are, depends on how thick the valleys of these are. Which, even though these are really thin, I still like it. It's still visually very interesting. When you create your lines, you can grab them and put them right over top of your waveform. And oops, we have a problem already. Our waveform is not, our lines are not covering our waveform. But it's no problem. We can easily go into our scale tool, and as long as you just scale the bottom, you can pull that down without adjusting the sizing of the lines. So we like that. That looks pretty good. In order to get to where we are here, we're going to use, since we are using these lines on a different layer over top of our waveform, we're going to go down to Overlay. Oh, maybe we weren't going to go to Overlay. I believe it was Soft Light, wasn't it? No, where are we? Was it Hard Light? Lighter Color, that's what it was. Okay, so we go to Lighter Color, and boom, there we have enough information for Blender to handle that displacement map. So once again, white is not going to carry any height whatsoever. Black is going to be the highest, and the mid-tone gray is going to be kind of in the middle. Now, if I go to the the photo that I had done before, and this is the actual source image that I sent over to Blender to make the file, and you can see that I made the posts on the outside so that you can put a string or a necklace through that, and you can see that my lines, my gray lines, are a little bit darker, so that means if white's here and black is here, gray is going to be kind of closer to the top. The lighter, the further down, the darker it's going, the further up. And we'll do a video also. There are a lot of people doing, I believe it's called lithophane, and what that does is it converts an image to grayscale, and then we're doing the exact same thing. We're just basically doing the very simple version of that with this. So what I'm going to do is show you what it looks like in Blender. But let's go ahead and delete this. I'm going to go ahead and do from scratch, show you exactly how we started. Now, the Blender is a very powerful 3D editing program. I've seen people make 3D movies, 3D rendered scenes. It's amazing piece of software. So it's not really that difficult to kind of get in and learn the basics of just doing, just a 3D printed object. So do yourself a favor, watch some videos online on how to just move around, and it's kind of a good trick to have if you ever need to make something. Maybe SketchUp isn't working the way you want it, or something else isn't working the way you want it. It's good to have just another piece of software. Blender is also really good when like if I want to edit an STL file, I'll bring it into Blender, save it out as a collada file, and that's something that Google SketchUp pulls in pretty nicely, and edit it from there. Blender starts off with a solid cube. I'm going to go ahead and delete that, and I'm going to make a mesh grid. So there we are. That's a mesh grid. As you see down here on the bottom left-hand corner, the default subdivisions in Y, the X and Y subdivisions are 10. That's think of it as subdivisions are your lines breaking up that grid, and so now we have 10 lines versus 10 lines. Not going to be detailed enough for our purposes. The higher you go, and let me go ahead and just put these in here. I like 300 by 300 seems to be good. The higher you go here, the more detail you're going to have your model take, and your STL file is going to be huge. I did one earlier. I think it was 1,000 by 1,000, and it was like a 60 megabyte file. And most slicers couldn't handle that. So we're going to do 300 by 300. I'm going to come over here to our textures window. I'm going to import that texture that we had created in Photoshop by just opening it. Go to where I have the JPEG of the waveform file. That's imported. I can now go over to the modifiers, add modifier, and displace. When I'm in displace, I'm going to just use my drop down texture, bring in the one that we had opened up, and there we are. But the problem is this is the right side up, so it's kind of worked a little bit different. Instead of black being high and white being low, it's white is high and black is low, and then gray somewhere in the middle. So we can fix that easily. I really would rather work kind of silhouette in Photoshop than work the opposite way, just to make Blender perform how we want it to. So over here in the scale feature, we're going to hit -1. Now that's also really tall. Right. So you see, the original one that I already had set up had the grays were a little bit dark. So do you see where this break is, where the grays are? It's really high on the model, and we'll fix that in Slicer if you don't like how that is. You could go back and lighten your grays in your photo editing program, but we can fix that in the slicing program. This is so high, I'm just going to change this to a -0.2 maybe. Oh, that's much better. I like that. And if we zoom in and rotate it around, that looks pretty good, except for we're really squished. Now if we have our mouse over the object and hit N, we can change our dimensions. And I liked 145, and that is just absolutely huge. And let's try 50. Nah, maybe. Let's see. Does that look right? Yeah, it doesn't look too bad. Okay. Let's keep it at 50, and then I want the height of Z. If we kind of go down here and rotate it down, we have no height whatsoever. And if you were doing one of those litho photos on 3D, you'd be around this area. But we want something a little bit higher. And I'm going to go 5. And if I kind of look across the object here, I can see where the valleys are and how low they go. I do like the fact that we're a little bit lower of a resolution, that instead of being actual valleys, they are tapered, and that's going to give you some strength to the object as well. Okay. Now I mentioned to you we can actually make those valleys a little bit deeper in our slicer program, so we're going to go ahead and do that now. I'm going to go to File, Export STL, and save that as a waveform file. I'm going to go ahead and give that another version number. We'll do 1.5. And you just can't hit enter in Blender. We'll go ahead and hit the export button. Now I've got this already set up pretty much in Slicer, so I really didn't need to save it anyway. But this is kind of how we have it set. Right here, I had it set for 110 by 42 by 6 millimeter high. I believe I had already cut it down as well. I did. Do you see how that looks different than what we had in Blender? So I'll show you that. But I did want to show you, because this takes a long time to preview, I wanted to show you the preview of this object before I had Slicer re-rendering it. We've got a skirt around it. And the file isn't the cleanest thing in the world, and I've noticed that the NetFab online cleaning software or whatever it is doesn't entirely always work with these. So you're going to go through and you're looking for obvious errors. Yeah, I mean, it looks good. It looks good. It's a small print. We're just going to send it like we did and go from there. I would recommend 100% infill. As you see right here, we've got probably 10 set. I would either recommend the 100% infill or your threshold, so that when we start creating those peaks, it automatically infills them 100%, just for structural integrity. Now, if I go to 3D, I'll show you how to use the cut setting. What we had originally done to get those valleys deeper was we would scale this up along the Z-axis, and let's just do it again, 200%. And when we scale the original file, we're not 50-50 like we pretty much are now. So you'll kind of have to let's pretend we're going to take out all the base here. We can then come up, make sure this is highlighted and cut, and this is Slicer, SLIC3R. Come down here, and I like getting a good side view of the object. And this slider here is what brings up this floor. And if we did that, we would have no base whatsoever. If we brought it down to, let's say right there, we've got a very, very thin base. When we perform the cut, if we keep both the upper part and the lower part checkboxes set, it will take the lower part, put it on the print bed, the upper part, put it on the print bed. But we don't need the lower part. We're going to just discard that completely. Perform the cut, and this is a pretty intense file. Perform the cut, and if we zoom back in now, we see pretty much what we did there. And that's it. When you send it with your 3D printer, you're going to go ahead and print that out, and you'll get the you'll get that nice little waveform there. Now, you want to check a couple things, and if we look on the screen here, I'll tell you where we had some issues. I had issues with this guy right here. Oh, geez. With this guy right here, it was a single piece that came out. He didn't look too good when he was done. So let's see. Let me turn this the proper way, and I snipped that one off. I think he was up here. There's also a couple other ones. There's a single up here. If you want to cut it off, you can. But that's about it. It's a very welcome piece to our 3D print shelf, even though it was printed in lower quality, faster. Did have some stringing, and of course there's a couple little tiny pieces that we had talked about before. But it turned out really nice. Even though I made all the valleys really thin, I mean, it's still a very interesting texture there. If you had some more flexible material, you could, it'd be more. It would be. I printed this in HIPS. Well, actually, I printed a similar one in HIPS yesterday, and that had a nice flex to it. If we do any kind of 3D, any kind of molding or reshaping of this item, which may be a future video, just the valleys there will lend itself to something I've got in mind. But whether you wanted to do just a flat surface, or you wanted to do just the outline, or if you wanted to go ahead and do some interesting pieces here, it's a really interesting print, and no one's going to know what this is until you kind of tell them what it is. But it's going to be really neat to have it there and be a neat conversation starter. So until next time, I hope this is something that you're interested in. If you make one, please post the information down below, and or follow us on Twitter at star.make. And if you like this video, I appreciate a thumbs up. We're just starting with the video series, and we're just starting with hopefully a very interesting channel on pretty much anything DIY or make related. Of course, kind of my flavor of the month is 3D printing. So I hope to mix it up a little bit, and if it's something you're interested in, if you'd like to subscribe as well, you won't miss out on any new content. Which if we get going pretty good, should be a very eclectic mix of pretty much anything you create with your hands. So once again, thank you for watching, and if you make one, make sure you let me know about this on Twitter. See you soon.